From KGB to Kremlin, the rise of Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin's journey from a relatively obscure KGB officer to the president of Russia is a tale of ambition, strategy, and a keen understanding of power dynamics. His ascent is not just a personal story but a reflection of the changing tides in Russian politics and global affairs. Vladimir Putin's path to power was anything but ordinary. Born in Leningrad, now St. Petersburg, in 1952, Putin grew up in a communal apartment, a far cry from the opulence of the Kremlin. His early life was marked by the hardships of post-war Soviet Union, which shaped his worldview and his approach to leadership. A former KGB officer, Putin rose through the ranks of post-Soviet Russian politics. His career in the KGB, where he served for 16 years, was a formative period that honed his skills in intelligence and strategy. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, Putin transitioned into politics, initially serving as an advisor to the mayor of St. Petersburg. He became prime minister in 1999 under Boris Yeltsin. This appointment was a significant leap, as Yeltsin was looking for a successor who could stabilize the country and continue his reforms. Putin's reputation as a disciplined and effective administrator made him a suitable candidate. Yeltsin's surprise resignation on New Year's Eve thrust Putin into the presidency. On December 31, 1999, Yeltsin announced his resignation, and Putin, as the prime minister, became the acting president. This unexpected turn of events placed Putin at the helm of a nation in transition, facing economic turmoil and political instability. This began a reign that would reshape Russia's role on the world stage. Putin's presidency marked a shift in Russia's foreign policy, moving from a period of relative isolation to one of assertive engagement. He sought to restore Russia's influence in global affairs, often challenging Western dominance. Putin projected an image of strength and decisiveness. His public persona was carefully crafted to convey confidence and control. Whether addressing the nation or participating in international summits, Putin's demeanor was that of a leader who was in command and unafraid to assert Russia's interests. He consolidated power and rebuilt Russia's economy. Under Putin's leadership, Russia experienced significant economic growth, driven by rising oil prices and market reforms. He implemented policies that stabilized the economy, reduced poverty, and increased the standard of living for many Russians. But his actions also raised concerns about authoritarianism and the erosion of democratic norms. Critics argue that Putin's consolidation of power came at the expense of democratic institutions. Media freedom was curtailed, political opposition was stifled, and controversial laws were enacted to maintain control. The world watched with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. International observers were divided on Putin's leadership. Some saw him as a stabilizing force in a volatile region, while others viewed his actions as a threat to democratic values and global stability. Who was this former spy now at the helm of a nuclear superpower? Putin's background in the KGB added an element of intrigue and caution to his leadership. His experience in intelligence and security informed his approach to governance and international relations, often prioritizing national security and strategic interests. What did his leadership mean for Russia and for the world? Putin's tenure has had profound implications for global politics. His assertive foreign policy, military interventions, and strategic alliances have reshaped the geopolitical landscape, challenging the post-Cold War order. These questions would define the next 2 decades of international relations. As Putin continued to lead Russia, his policies and actions became a focal point of international discourse. From the annexation of Crimea to involvement in Syria, Putin's Russia has been a key player in numerous global conflicts and diplomatic negotiations. Putin's rise marked a turning point in history. His leadership has been a defining feature of the early 21st century, influencing not only Russia's trajectory, but also the broader international order. His ability to navigate complex political landscapes and assert Russia's power has left an indelible mark on history. It signaled the end of the post-Cold War era and the emergence of a new, more assertive Russia. Putin's tenure has been characterized by a departure from the cooperative spirit of the post-Cold War period, ushering in an era where Russia seeks to reclaim its status as a major global power, often in opposition to Western interests. Bill Clinton, the U.S. president at the time of Putin's ascent, faced the challenge of engaging with this new Russia. Clinton sought common ground with Putin on issues like arms control and nuclear non-proliferation. The two leaders signed the Strategic Offensive Reductions Treaty, aiming to reduce their nuclear arsenals. However, underlying tensions remained. The expansion of NATO eastward, closer to Russia's borders, became a point of contention. Putin saw it as a betrayal of Western promises. The war in Chechnya, launched by Putin to quell separatist movements, also strained relations. The West condemned Russia's brutal tactics. Despite attempts at cooperation, the seeds of future discord were sown. George W. Bush's presidency began with a famously warm meeting with Putin. Bush claimed to have looked into Putin's eyes and got a sense of his soul. However, this initial rapport soon soured. The 9/11 attacks brought a brief period of cooperation. Russia, also a target of terrorism, provided intelligence and logistical support to the U.S., but the U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003 marked a turning point. Putin opposed the war, seeing it as an example of American unilateralism. Relations further deteriorated with the 2008 Russo-Georgian War. Russia's military intervention in Georgia, a U.S. ally, solidified the growing rift between the two countries. Section 4, Obama's Reset, a thaw that soon froze over. When Barack Obama took office in 2009, he attempted a reset in U.S.-Russia relations. This was a significant move, considering the strained ties that had characterized the previous years. Obama believed that a fresh start could pave the way for more constructive engagement between the two nations. His administration pursued cooperation on issues like arms control and Iran's nuclear program. These were areas where both countries had mutual interests, and Obama saw an opportunity to build trust and reduce the risk of conflict. The early years of his presidency saw a series of high-level meetings and negotiations aimed at finding common ground. This led to the signing of the New START Treaty, further reducing their nuclear stockpiles. The treaty was hailed as a major achievement and a testament to what could be accomplished when both sides were willing to engage in dialogue. It was a moment of optimism, suggesting that the reset might indeed lead to a more stable and cooperative relationship. However, this thaw proved short-lived. Despite the initial progress, underlying tensions and mistrust remained. The relationship began to deteriorate as both sides accused each other of failing to live up to their commitments. Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014 and its support for separatists in eastern Ukraine drew international condemnation. This aggressive move by Russia was seen as a blatant violation of international law and a direct challenge to the post-Cold War order. The situation in Ukraine quickly escalated, with fighting breaking out in the eastern regions and thousands of lives being lost. The U.S. and its allies imposed sanctions on Russia, plunging relations to a new post-Cold War low. These sanctions targeted key sectors of the Russian economy, including finance, energy, and defense, and were intended to pressure Moscow into changing its course. However, instead of backing down, Russia responded with its own set of counter-sanctions, further deepening the rift. The Obama administration also accused Russia of interfering in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. This accusation was based on evidence that Russian hackers had targeted American political institutions and sought to influence the outcome of the election. The allegations of election interference added a new and deeply troubling dimension to the already strained relationship. This further fueled tensions and cast a long shadow over the relationship. The accusations of election meddling led to a series of retaliatory measures, including the expulsion of diplomats and the imposition of additional sanctions. The hopes of a reset had long faded, replaced by a deep and pervasive mistrust that would take years, if not decades, to overcome. Section 5. The Trump Enigma: Unpredictability on the World Stage. Donald Trump's presidency brought a new level of complexity to U.S.-Russia relations. His unconventional style and unpredictable decisions often left both allies and adversaries guessing. Trump's public admiration for Putin and his reluctance to criticize Russia raised eyebrows. Many wondered if this was a strategic move or a genuine personal affinity. The Mueller investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election further complicated matters. The investigation, which lasted nearly 2 years, delved deep into the connections between Trump's campaign and Russian operatives. While the investigation did not establish collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia, it did find evidence of Russian efforts to influence the election. This revelation added another layer of tension to an already strained relationship. Despite Trump's seemingly warm personal rapport with Putin, U.S. policy towards Russia remained largely confrontational. This dichotomy was evident in various policy decisions and public statements. the Trump administration imposed additional sanctions, expelled Russian diplomats, and withdrew from key arms control treaties. These actions were in stark contrast to Trump's personal overtures to Putin, creating a confusing and often contradictory narrative. This contradictory approach left observers puzzled and fueled uncertainty about the future of the relationship. Analysts and commentators speculated endlessly about the true nature of Trump's strategy, if there was one at all. The unpredictability of his actions made it difficult for both allies and adversaries to formulate a coherent response. This period in U.S.-Russia relations will be remembered for its complexity and the enigmatic nature of the Trump presidency. The world watched closely, trying to decipher the signals and anticipate the next move in this high-stakes geopolitical chess game. Section 6. Biden's firm hand confrontation in the face of aggression. Joe Biden entered the White House with decades of experience dealing with Russia. He pledged to take a tough stance against Putin's aggression. The Biden administration imposed new sanctions in response to the poisoning and imprisonment of opposition leader Alexei Navalny. The U.S. also provided military and financial support to Ukraine amid ongoing tensions with Russia. Biden's approach reflects a return to a more traditional, confrontational posture toward Russia. He has condemned Russia's human rights abuses and its interference in democratic processes. The Biden administration has also sought to rally allies in Europe and elsewhere to present a united front against Russian aggression.